Thank you for joining us today for this briefing for the Museum Estate and Development Fund. We are very pleased to announce the 6th round of this capital fund for 2026-27, and we'll be sharing more information on this in today's presentation. We'll start soon, but before we do, this is a reminder that you are watching a recording, so feel free to pause and review as you need. We have also provided a BSL interpreted version of this briefing and a copy of the slides. My name is Georgie Parker, and I am the Senior Officer in the Capital Investment Team. I manage the MEND programme for the Arts Council. MEND is an open access capital fund for non-national accredited museums and local authorities based in England. The funding is for long-term strategic investment in museums' core infrastructure. MEND is designed to fund urgent repair and maintenance work with identified need within the next 1 to 2 years. This programme can fund capital expenditure only. The funding will be awarded for projects running from April 2027 to March 2030. Applications can range from £50,000 to £5 million, and we have an overall budget of £25,250,000 for this round. MEND is a competitive fund and we anticipate high demand. There are 2 main impacts we expect to see from this investment. We expect that museums across England who are awarded a MEND grant will, firstly, improve their core infrastructure by tackling their maintenance backlogs. Secondly, reduce the immediate risk to buildings, visitors, staff and collections due to improved core infrastructure. In terms of outcomes, there are a few things we expect to see from recipients of this investment. Museums will become more financially resilient and environmentally responsible by developing and implementing maintenance plans. The environmental performance of buildings and equipment will be improved, supporting the reduction in carbon emissions in the museum sector. Museums' ability to offer independent access for disabled people and accommodation of diverse user needs will be improved. And museums will have strengthened their contribution to local communities and regeneration by preserving landmark buildings and ensuring locally treasured collections are accessible to the public. The portal for Expressions of Interest, or EOI, opens on the grant system at 10 AM on Monday, the 11th of May 2026. The deadline is 12 PM or midday on Friday, the 5th of June 2026. Then, reviews will take place and projects with strong potential will be invited to submit a full application. We will inform successful EOI applicants by the 26th of June 2026. The full application portal will open on the grant system at 10 AM on Monday, the 29th of June. The deadline is 12 PM or midday on Friday, the 4th of September 2026. We will then go through an assessment process and the balancing panel. Final decisions will be made by our executive board by March 2027. Who can apply? Applicants must be non-national accredited museums based in England, local authorities based in England who are responsible for the maintenance of non-national accredited museum buildings, or partnerships between a local authority and a non-national accredited museum based in England. Organisations who applied in previous rounds can apply to round 6, including those who were funded previously. If you were previously successful and have already received a MEND grant, you must apply for activity that is distinct and separate from your previous funded activity. If you were previously unsuccessful, you can apply to fund the same activity that you previously applied for. It is anticipated that the fund will be investing in the following broad categories: protecting fabric and longevity of the structure, protecting the exhibits and collections through repairs to the building fabric, upgrading building services, dealing with urgent equality and accessibility issues, and improving environmental performance of museums through repairs to existing infrastructure. These must all be costs that can be capitalised on your organisation's balance sheet. You can only make one application per museum site to this round of MEND. Multiple museum buildings can be included in one application if they are on the same museum site and are all accredited. To apply to MEND, your project must be eligible for the fund. You must provide evidence in a recent costed condition survey prepared by a suitably qualified professional that the work applied for is the most urgent and needs to be carried out in the next 1 to 2 years compared to any other work across your estate. The survey must have been completed within the last 5 years, with costs updated within the last 12 months. The costed condition survey will be a mandatory attachment for both the expression of interest and full application. The costed condition survey should include building services installations if these are part of the project. A second building services specific costed condition survey may be required if this is not covered in the initial costed condition survey. You must demonstrate freehold or leasehold ownership of the land and buildings. This means if you are managing the building only but are not the freeholder or the leaseholder, you cannot apply. You must also meet our minimum requirements for partnership funding, which are: for grants between £50,000 and £1 million, 5% of the total project costs must come from other sources. For grants over £1 million and up to £5 million, 10% of the total project costs must come from other sources. You must provide plans for architectural and engineering elements that are developed up to and including RIBA Work Stage 3, accompanied by a relevant cost plan at the full application stage. If you are not following the RIBA work stages, plans should be developed up to and including the equivalent of RIBA Work Stage 3. These plans will be a mandatory attachment in the full application. The application process will begin with an expression of interest stage, or EOI, which all applicants must complete before being able to submit a full application. Expressions of interest are made using the Arts Council's grant system. First, you must create a user account and an applicant profile on the grant system. You cannot start your expression of interest until your applicant profile has been validated, which will take up to 10 working days. The eligibility questionnaire will confirm whether your proposal appears to be eligible for this fund. If your proposal appears eligible, you will be asked to complete the expression of interest on the grant system. As part of the expression of interest, you should provide a headline budget that gives an overview of how you will spend the grant and confirm how you will raise the required partnership funding. Provide details of your proposed project and identify how your project contributes to the aims and outcomes of MEND. Provide details of the development work you have already undertaken, including the RIBA design stage you have reached. Confirm ownership of land and buildings. You must be either the freeholder or the leaseholder. And attach a recent costed condition survey undertaken by an appropriately qualified professional as evidence that the work you have applied for urgently needs to be carried out in the next 1 to 2 years compared to any other work across your estate. Projects that are considered to have a strong potential to deliver against the aims and outcomes of the fund will be invited to submit a full application. It is an eligibility requirement that projects complete REBA Work Stage 3 by the full application submission on the 4th of September 2026. If you are not following REBA work stages, then your plans must be at an equivalent level of development. We would still expect to see REBA 3 level of drawings, plans, costings, and other related documents. The REBA Plan of Work 2020 is a procedural guide for architects and construction professionals working on building projects. There are 8 stages in this plan, and you can find a detailed breakdown on the REBA website. What is Work Stage 3 and why do we require it? Stage 3 is titled Spatial Coordination, and as the name suggests, it's where the idea or the initial concepts and sketches are applied to the space in which the work is to be done. In technical terms, the architectural concept is validated through design studies and engineering analysis. What this means in layman's terms is that qualified people such as architects or engineers will consider the project requirements, measure up the existing space, measure up the work to take place, test it out, plan it, and draw it on a computer. It will be drawn to scale, so we'll usually see measurements. There might be design notes, there might be floor plans and cross sections. It is important that all aspects of your project are developed to REBA Stage 3. So if you have both architectural and mechanical and engineering elements, both need to have reached Stage 3. These drawings allow us not only to visualize the work to be carried out, but it shows us that the project is viable and gives the cost consultant or quantity surveyor a level of detail that allows them to accurately estimate the costs of the project and produce an accurate cost plan. By reaching REBA Stage 3, you will have a good grasp on most aspects of your project. Therefore, your project will be more likely to run on time, on budget, and achieve its intended outcomes. It also gives us at the Arts Council the confidence that our grant will be used for its intended purpose. To help us understand how far along your project development is, as part of the expression of interest, we will ask you to show us which documents or project tasks you have completed so far. Some of the items in this list on the screen relate to REBA Stage 3, and others are to give us a wider sense of your project progress. We will ask if you have completed design information, for example, spatially coordinated architectural designs, including spatially coordinated building services and mechanical and electrical designs, if relevant to your project. A cost plan informed by the design information. Consultation with statutory bodies, for example, listed building consent or pre-planning permission advice. Design team appointments, for example, an architect or conservation accredited architect if relevant for a heritage project, a principal designer, structural engineer or quantity surveyor. A costed risk register with mitigations. A timetable or programme of works. A costed conditions survey that covers the full site, and an access audit if your application includes access works. Please note that completing everything on the list does not necessarily mean that your project has completed REBA Stage 3. When your application is submitted, we will complete a qualitative review of the information provided to determine this. If you are offered a grant, you will need to demonstrate that you own the land and/or buildings either as a freehold or leasehold on which you spend the grant, and that the land and/or buildings can be used for the project purposes. If you are not the freeholder or the leaseholder, you cannot apply to mend. In all cases, the lease should be without a break clause, which means removing one or more parties the right to end the lease in certain circumstances. A forfeiture on insolvency clause, which is removing the right for the landlord to end the lease if the tenant becomes insolvent, and have a permitted user clause that allows the property to be used as a museum. The lease must also be assignable. Please note, our lease length requirements, which are 10 years for grants from £50,000 up to and including £500,000, 15 years for grants over £500,000 up to and including £1 million, and 20 years for grants over £1 million up to and including £5 million. If your lease does not meet our leasehold requirements, you will need to arrange with the freeholder for a deed of variation to the lease. We would require this to be in place prior to any grant payments being released. We would recommend that leaseholders who would need a deed of variation begin the conversation with their freeholder as soon as possible, even before the application is submitted, to ensure agreement on both sides. You should ensure you are clear on all aspects of your lease and freehold status. It is advised that you confirm and discuss any negotiations that may be required with your landlord prior to applying, as you will need to tell us about your lease and freehold status at the point of application, not your expected or planned status at the point of potential award. Further details are set out in the capital requirements section of the applicant guidance. Public funding regulations require us to consider taking security in relation to grants made to fund the purchase of buildings or refurbishment or extension of land and buildings. MEND follows our standard security policy, which means that when we make a capital grant of £500,000 or more, we must ensure that the buildings and equipment will be used for the grant purposes. We will require you to make legal commitments to secure the grant purpose. The form these take depends on the amount of grant and the type of organisation receiving the grant, and will be set out in the grant agreement. These will range from a deed of covenant with restriction on title to a fixed and floating charge, together with the supporting legal documents relevant to the transaction. These legal commitments will need to be in place prior to the release of any grant funding, which may affect your project plan and cash flow. The full application portal will open on the grant system on Monday, the 29th of June. The deadline for submitting is 12 p.m. or midday on Friday, the 4th of September 2026. Please note that if you are invited to submit a full application, this is not a guarantee that the application will go on to be successful. In previous rounds, we have invited 50 applications and are planning to do the same for round 6. Historic England will hold advice visits or conversations throughout this period, and these are currently scheduled to happen between the 29th of June and the 6th of August. You can refer to the applicant guidance on our website for a detailed breakdown of the application form, and another briefing for the full application stage will be published in July. Finally, here is a reminder of where you can find further information and support. You can visit the MEND webpage at artscouncil.org.uk. Here you can find the applicant guidance in full, as well as an easy read, large print and audio version. We also have a frequently asked questions section on our webpage. If you have any more questions or if you require access support with your application, please email inquiries@artscouncil.org.uk. And if you are invited to submit a full application, then there will be a further briefing to support with the technical elements of your application. Thank you for listening.